Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing on with Codominance by CurlyStar09, and we're going to be doing chapters 15 and 16. Chapter 15, Discussion. Akio had woken up a couple hours later with a bright smile that made both his dads let out a sigh of relief. It was still early in the morning, and even though they were both exhausted, only taking a short nap, as they waited for an update, they weren't too tired, used to lack of sleep due to their line of work. Still, Bakugou was anxious to get Akio home. Dr. Ikeda came in a couple of minutes after Akio woke up, giving them instructions for medication that he would be taking for 5 days and asked them to schedule an appointment in 2 days for a checkup. Bakugou listened intently, Kirishima at his side holding Akio and holding the blonde's other hand. They thanked the doctor and the nurses as they made their way out, every step feeling less heavy than the last until they got back to the car. "All right, little pebble," Kirishima said once he started driving out of the parking lot. "Time to go home." "You need to take a nap as soon as we get back, eh? Your shift starts in a couple hours," Bakugou reminded him. "I'll call in," Kirishima told him with a shrug. Bakugou blinked before he could respond. "You can't do that. You just cats," Kirishima said as he reached over for the blonde's hand. "It's 1 day. Fat Gum won't have a problem with it, and we have other things we need to discuss that are more important." Bakugou felt his heart speeding up slightly. He cleared his throat. "You lucky you don't work for me. That shit wouldn't be allowed." Kirishima let out a short laugh. "Whatever you say, cats. Language, by the way." They rode in silence for the rest of the drive, Akio falling asleep halfway home. Kirishima pulled into a drive-thru, getting them some food for breakfast before finally heading back to the house. Neither one of them wanted to cook after the night they had just had. They were greeted by a very excited Riot, which resulted in a lot of hushing and trying to make sure Akio hadn't woken up from all the barking. They laid Akio down for a nap in his playpen nearby while they enjoyed their breakfast, both of them in comfortable silence and the relief of finally being back home. It wasn't until they were almost done eating that Kirishima finally spoke up. "Can we talk now? Or maybe we should take a nap first?" He gave Bakugou a smile that seemed a bit shy, and Bakugou couldn't help the way he reached for Kirishima's hand. "We can talk now. Let's just clean up first," he told Kirishima before standing up. He leaned over and kissed Kirishima's cheek, trying to reassure him. Kirishima smiled and stood up to help as well. The house had been left in a bit of disarray on the way out the previous night. The bathroom still had Akio's bathtub full of water, and there were toys and rags they had tried to use to calm Akio down in random places. They worked together, picking up and cleaning quickly, brushing into each other every now and then, with a lingering hand against a hip, a quick kiss here, and a knowing smile there. It felt so natural, it seemed unreal to Bakugou that it hadn't even been 24 hours since he thought he stood no chance at being anything other than a friend to Kirishima. As they finished cleaning, he could feel his hands growing sweaty from how nervous he was about the conversation they both knew they had to have. They moved Akio carefully into his cot that they placed in Kirishima's room. They still had to keep an eye on him after all. Kirishima laid the little gremlin down, and Akio let out a small sigh as he got comfortable once more. Kirishima touched the baby's forehead ever so lightly, making sure he wasn't warm before going and joining Bakugou, who was sitting on the bed. They sat next to each other for a second before Bakugou let out a sigh. "All right, let's fucking talk." "Are we official?" Kirishima asked, his tone making it obvious that he wasn't sure he was using the right word. "I mean, I want to be," Bakugou admitted, hating how shy he sounded even to himself. Kirishima smiled, leaning over to kiss Bakugou's cheek. I think this is where I should ask you to be my boyfriend, but it also feels like we already skipped a couple of steps. Bakugou couldn't help but let out a bit of a laugh as he leaned his forehead against Kirishima's. Guess the stakes are high as fuck when we already have a kid, Bakugou hummed in agreement. The whole world thinks we have been together for a while as well, Kirishima murmured as he lifted a hand, fingers brushing Bakugou's cheek softly. Where do we start, Katsuki? Bakugou took in a sharp breath. It was hard to think past the fact that he could lean in and just kiss Kirishima once more. It was enough to make him want to forget how important this conversation was and just what it meant, not just for them, but for Akio. Bakugou blinked slowly, his eyes going from Kirishima's lips up to meeting bright red eyes that were awaiting a response. We can take it one day at a time, Bakugou offered. I know I want to be with you, eh? I've wanted that for a long time now. I was just a fucking coward, and I just couldn't lose me as a friend. Kirishima finished, a smile pulling at his lips as his hand finally cupped Bakugou's face. We were both on the same page, if that's what you were going to say. You deserve better than me, Bakugou started with a shake of his head. Someone that will make you happy. Katsuki, you make me happy, Kirishima interrupted, pulling back in order to see all of Bakugou. I don't think I would have gotten to where I am today without you. Red, Bakugou started, tears in his eyes that he refused to acknowledge were there. You don't give yourself enough credit. You are such an amazing hero, so manly and incredible. You earned everything you have. I need you to know that before we decide what we are going to be from now on. Kirishima nodded, leaning forward slightly, and Bakugou closed his eyes with no hesitation as their lips met for a slow, lingering kiss. What are we going to be from now on? Kirishima asked, a bit breathless once they pulled away. I want us to be more. A lot more, Bakugou whispered, a hint of desperation in his voice. I want to say boyfriends, but that doesn't sound like enough right now. Kirishima nodded in agreement. I want us to be Akio's parents, to be a family, and I want us to be so much, but I don't think I have a word for it. He laughed at the realization. You have always meant so much to me. No word seems to fit. Bakugou grinned in the feral way that Kirishima adored. I just want you to know, if we do this, this is it for me. You're it for me. I love you, Katsuki. What makes you think that you aren't the one person I want to spend my life with? Kirishima asked, a small chuckle at the way Bakugou's eyes opened wide at his confession. I love you too, Eijirou, Bakugou told him with a bit of a rush and a slight flush on his face. I know we've skipped a couple of steps. For fuck's sakes, we have a kid. But can we go on a date? I want to make fucking sure I do things right. Kirishima smiled wide. Yeah, of course you can. I would love to go on a date with you. Bakugou let out a breath he hadn't realized he had been holding. Part of him was still waiting for Kirishima to push him away, to reject him, to realize that he didn't want Bakugou, but it didn't happen. Instead, Kirishima leaned in, kissing Bakugou's cheek, then the corner of his mouth before kissing him fully. A hand found its way to the back of Bakugou's neck to pull him just a bit closer. Bakugou let out the smallest whimper at the kiss, leaning into Kirishima as he felt himself melt, his arms snaking their way around Kirishima's neck, making sure he wouldn't pull away. Not that Kirishima wanted to. Neither of them wanted to be anywhere else at that moment. Time passes. They laid down in Kirishima's bed, legs tangled together as they faced each other, arms around each other. Kirishima couldn't help but think that they fit so well together. It was crazy they hadn't arrived at this, to them being together sooner. He was supposed to be sleeping, taking a nap after the exhausting night they had had, yet he couldn't bring himself to fall asleep. Part of him was worried that he would wake up and it would turn out it had all been a dream. But mostly, he didn't want to fall asleep until he had memorized what it felt like to have Bakugou next to him. The blonde was fast asleep, his head on Kirishima's chest with a hand holding onto his shirt as if making sure he stayed in place. His face looked so calm and peaceful, but it was clear to see the lines that time and work had been leaving behind, even if they were small or not that noticeable yet. Kirishima couldn't help but wonder when they started marking their presence on his best friend's face. They used to sleep like this back at UA, when they could make excuses about falling asleep due to exhaustion or being too tired to walk to their own dorm room. Also, when the nights had felt too lonely after a nightmare one of them couldn't quite shake. It became a habit that was hard to break. That is, until they graduated. It wasn't as easy as going to the room next door anymore, and if he was being honest, Kirishima wished for the distance that was created during those years. He couldn't make the excuse anymore, and it suddenly meant something, turned into an actual choice to spend the night at his best friend's place, which needed some actual logic in order for him to be able to pretend that it didn't mean anything, at least not for Bakugou. So he had pulled away, changing the way he used to make excuses to stay into excuses to go so that he wasn't over too late, that temptation won over. He had created a distance he thought he needed in order to protect their friendship and his already aching heart from rejection that would break them apart forever. And with time, he had forgotten what it was like to have Bakugou asleep next to him. Even then, they found ways around it for when a nightmare crept into their heads in the middle of the night. This turned into late-night phone calls at ungodly hours where they just stayed on the phone until they fell asleep, talking about anything and everything that came to mind. Sometimes Bakugou would be out of the country when Kirishima got a call at 2 p.m., just to hear a soft whisper at the other end. Kirishima would stay on the line even if he was at work, and just talk to Bakugou until he heard his breathing even out before whispering goodnight and hanging up. Kirishima didn't know how they never realized how close they had always been, and how they both pulled away from one another multiple times throughout the years when they got too scared of ruining what they had. Maybe they would have gotten to this point sooner. Maybe it would have blown up on them. Or maybe they were always supposed to get here. Whether it had been sooner or later didn't matter. They had made it where they had to be, and they would go wherever they needed to together. Time passes. Bakugou woke up a couple hours later when Akio started calling out to them. Da, 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 Akio said in a steady stream as he waited for one of his dads to pick him up. Bakugou groaned, a bit surprised when he opened his eyes to find Kirishima's sleeping face in front of him. He felt his breath hitch slightly before a small smile pulled at his lips. He untangled himself from his partner. Partner. They had decided on a word since it said everything they were to each other, not something flimsy like boyfriend. Bakugou leaned down and placed a kiss on Kirishima's cheek before turning to Akio with a hushed tone. Don't wake up your dad, Gremlin. He's still tired. He picked up Akio, placing a kiss against his chubby cheek before making his way out of the room in order to let Kirishima sleep. Let's go find something to do while your dad sleeps, Bakugou told him, and Akio just babbled along as if explaining what he wanted to do. Bakugou set up a blanket with toys on the floor for Akio to play with, his fat gum plush and blocks among them, while he sat next to him on his laptop. Riot had come along and Bakugou watched him with careful eyes until the big dog laid down nearby. Akio was delighted, reaching out for Riot with a bit too much force that made Bakugou worry that the dog would retaliate, but the dog just let Akio do to him what he pleased. Soon enough, Akio turned back to his toys with the dog snuggling a bit closer to him. Told you they would get along. Kirishima's voice, still heavy with sleep, startled Bakugou a bit. Hey, did we wake you? Bakugou asked. Kirishima shook his head as he made his way over to them, taking the long way around the sofa in order to sit next to Bakugou on the floor. Kirishima gave Bakugou a quick kiss before letting himself lean against the sofa. Fat texted, wanted to know how little Pebble was doing. He seems better, Bakugou mumbled, but he couldn't help but worry. Akio was too little to be able to tell them if he was feeling uncomfortable, after all. What are you doing? Kirishima asked, eyes falling onto Bakugou's laptop. Reading some of the notes Deku sent me on the new files they were able to get, Bakugou explained. There was a lot more about the actual experiments here other than just general information. Bakugou let out a sigh. Nothing on the location yet, but apparently it's a lot on how they picked out which DNA to use. Kirishima hummed to let Bakugou know he was listening, letting his fall onto his partner's shoulder. How is Midoriya doing with all of this? Kirishima asked, his voice a bit tight. Not very well, Bakugou said with a sigh. A lot of the first trials relied on the fact that the villains hoped that some of All for One would be passed down, or at least one of Deku's quirks on its own. But it just resulted in quirkless kids that they didn't want. Kirishima's arms found its way around Bakugou's waist, pulling him close. Bakugou couldn't help but look up at Akio, who was distracted with his toys, piling blocks on top of Riot, who was trying hard not to move. He shouldn't be hearing about this. Maybe one day they would tell him how he came into their lives, but not anytime soon. He needed to know just how loved he was, no matter how he came to be. They had reports on almost every top hero in the country, trying to find combinations that would work well together. That's what I'm reading right now. Deku sent me the whole file that looks scarily familiar to one of his notebooks. Was it the woman we captured? Is she the one that wrote the notes? Kirishima asked, a bit of venom in his voice. Bakugou felt a small chill run down his spine at the tone. We don't know for sure, but it's clear that she had help, Bakugou exclaimed as he clicked through some of the windows on his screen, showing everything Deku had sent. This just seems like a lot for just one person. We'll find them, Kirishima promised, but Bakugou wasn't sure who he was talking to. Maybe it was to him or Akio. Maybe it had been directed to himself. It didn't matter because Bakugou knew Kirishima was right. Time passes. They had the news on the screen while they played with Akio when they got a phone call. Bakugou's screen lit up as his phone vibrated as the caller ID displayed unknown number on the screen. Bakugou raised an eyebrow at that. No one other than work and people he deemed worthy had his cell phone number. He grabbed his phone, sliding the screen in order to answer. What? He barked into the phone in annoyance. You broke our agreement, Mr. Dynamite. Sato's voice came over the other end. Bakugou sat up a bit straighter before signaling at Kirishima with his free hand. Kirishima raised an eyebrow at him and waited for Bakugou to place the call on speaker. I don't know what you mean by that, Bakugou grumbled into the phone. I'm talking about your agreement to make sure the child was supposed to get any medical treatment at one of our facilities. Her voice was firm and ice cold. No, the agreement was for him to have monthly checkups done there. Nothing about emergency care, Bakugou told her with an eye roll. A civilian hospital would be unable to provide the care necessary, especially since they aren't aware of the circumstances of how it was created. She trailed off. We are requesting you bring the child in for a checkup by one of our own doctors immediately so that... No, Kirishima interjected. Excuse you? We are not taking him for you to run experiments on him. You said every month, and it hasn't been a month yet. It's an infection, and he shouldn't be going outside just because you want to flash your badge around, Kirishima said firmly. His voice leveled, but Bakugou could hear the slow anger burning underneath. Do you really think this is a wise choice? Sato asked. You don't know if... We will bring him when we have a scheduled visit set up, Kirishima told her, leaving no room for argument. We will decide where our son gets treated, Bakugou added. You can't tell us shit about it. We are following your rules. I have them in writing in case you need a fucking copy. Bakugou hung up before the vile woman had a chance to answer. There were a couple beats of silence before either of them spoke. How much trouble do you think we're going to get in for that one? Kirishima asked. Not sure, Bakugou answered, but we will give them a fucking fight. Chapter 16. A Plan. They had decided to keep their relationship between them for now, not telling their friends or family that they were officially not pretending to be together or whatever. They just wanted some time to figure their relationship out together, getting to know each other in this new way and measuring where the new boundaries between them were. They did have a lot to deal with other than that, so it was nice to have some time to themselves. It was a quiet couple of days, to the point that Bakugou started looking over his shoulder every time they left the house. Maybe he was being paranoid, but Sato did not seem like the type of woman that let things go that easily, especially when it came to something to do with her job with the Hero Commission. It was a gut feeling that Bakugou couldn't shake that some bullshit was coming their way. Sweetheart, Kirishima's voice interrupted Bakugou's spiral. I'm heading to work. I'll see you later for Akio's appointment. Sure, babe, Bakugou said, kissing his partner goodbye. They were standing in the kitchen. Bakugou was cleaning up after the breakfast he had made for both of them, Akio on his high chair playing with one of his teething toys. Go kick some ass. Kirishima smiled brightly, bumping his fists together. I'll let it go because you know I always do. Bakugou grinned. You are such a dork. And yet you still like me, Kirishima said with a grin, getting close, almost closing Bakugou in against the counter. Sometimes, Bakugou said with an eye roll, his arms wrapping around Kirishima's neck. Kirishima laughed, leaning down as Bakugou pulled him down for their lips to meet. You make it so hard for me to leave. Kirishima grins against Bakugou's lips. Tough shit, Bakugou says, kissing the redhead once more, before he can get in trouble for his language. Da! Akio called behind them. Da! 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 Coming, Kirishima said to Akio before kissing Bakugou once more. I need to give the little pebble a kiss before I leave as well. Bakugou chuckles. All right, go say bye to the Kremlin. You're going to be late. Worth it, Kirishima said with a grin before finally pulling away. He walked over to Akio, kissing the baby's cheeks before saying a final goodbye and heading out the door. Bakugou chuckled as Kirishima made his way out the door. Time passes. Due to Kirishima's work schedule, Akio's doctor's appointment was set for noon so that both of them could get there. Akio had been doing so much better, and Bakugou was being strict when it came to the medication they had gotten for him. Hopefully they would get the all clear from the doctor at the appointment. Kirishima let out a sigh as they waited to be called in to see the doctor. He had taken an extended lunch for this, but he still had a time limit on how long he could be out. Stop fidgeting, Bakugou told him, handing over Akio to Kirishima. Sorry, just nervous about all this, Kirishima told him as he held Akio, who took the opportunity to slap the redhead's face slightly a couple of times. See, even the gremlin is telling you to stop, Bakugou told him. He's nicer than you about it, Kirishima joked as he adjusted Akio in his arms. Bakugou scoffed, looking around to see who was in the waiting room. It was empty for the most part, the only other people spread out around the rooms, not paying them much attention. If he's well enough, he can go to daycare, Bakugou said, still hesitant about leaving Akio with total strangers. He'll be fine, Cats, Kirishima assured him, his hand finding Bakugou's. He'll make friends and he'll get used to other people. That's what we wanted, right? Yeah, I have a very bad feeling, Bakugou confessed softly. Kirishima let out a sigh. I know, I do too, but we can't hide him away forever. I think we should go to the Hero Commission before they come to us, Bakugou suggested. We have to get ahead of this. We can't let them dictate how far this goes. Kirishima took a sharp breath. If that's what you think is best, then let's do it. But I'm not taking Akio anywhere near that place. Bakugou nodded in agreement. Do you think Eraser would be willing to babysit again? Any of the pro heroes we know would be more than likely to offer if he can't. Kirishima chuckled. Well, Dunceface isn't allowed anywhere near Akio without supervision, Bakugou warned. I'll make sure at least Shinso is in the same room with Denki at all times, Kirishima assured him, leaning over to kiss Bakugou's temple. He's our last possible option, Bakugou told him, but he had a hint of a smile on his lips. Shortly after, they were called in to see the doctor, so they got up from their seats to walk hand in hand to the examination room. Dr. Akita pronounced Akio fully recovered after the examination, but reminded Bakugou and Kirishima that he had to continue taking his medication. After a couple questions, the doctor told them that Akio should have no problem going to daycare. He was healthy and ready to make new friends, according to Dr. Akita. I need to head back to work, Kirishima told Bakugou as they stepped out of the hospital. Do you think we should go to the Hero Commission today? Bakugou asked softly, mostly thinking about finding someone to babysit. Let's do it tomorrow, Kirishima told him. We don't even know what we're going to say. I'll start planning, Bakugou told him with a nod as they arrived at his car. Kirishima opened the back door so he could place Akio in his car seat. Kirishima secured Akio in his seat, handing him his fat gum plush once he was done. Akio let out a delighted squeal at the sight of the toy. The redhead couldn't help but smile, leaning down to give Akio a quick kiss before closing the door. I'll be home right after work to help you, Kirishima promised, an arm already pulling Bakugou close. You better, Bakugou told him, but he let himself be pulled into Kirishima before kissing him. Stay safe, Red. Let me know when you get home, Kirishima told him. Love you, Bakugou whispered as he leaned in for another kiss. Love you more. Kirishima smiled before pulling away. Time passes. Kirishima was almost out of his shift when it happened. There was no warning or any signs that gave it away until it was too late. He was walking around on patrol with one of his interns on a mostly quiet day. They had been having a conversation about using defensive quirks in attacks. Kirishima explained how he uses his quirk in battle and tried to help the intern come up with ideas for their own defensive quirk. They were almost back at the agency, maybe a block away, when a car pulled up beside them. A black car with tinted windows pulled Kirishima's attention right away, putting him on high alert when the door opened and a man in a suit stepped out. Mr. Red Riot, will you please come with us? The man said, gesturing towards the open door. What is this about? Kirishima asked with a raised eyebrow, an arm extended protectively in front of his intern. Sorry for being rude, the man said as he adjusted his tie. I work for the Hero Commission, and we must have a word with you. Kirishima hesitated, not sure what was going on. This can wait. I need to finish my shift. I must insist. The man almost cut him off, side-eyeing the intern. In private, of course. This is a delicate matter. There had to be a way to let Bakugou know what was going on. That was the first thing that came to Kirishima's mind. Go back to the agency, Kirishima told the intern before turning and telling him as clearly as possible. Tell them it's all good, just a code orange. The intern nodded, walking away, but turning around to look at them a couple of times as he made his way back. Code Orange? The man asked as he stepped aside for Kirishima to get in the car. Means suspicious activity, something to keep an eye on, Kirishima explained with a shrug, stepping into the car. Well then, Miss Sato awaits, the man said as he climbed inside, closing the door behind him. Time passes. Bakugou cursed under his breath as he hurried to pick up the phone. Akio was napping, and the last thing he needed was for him to wake up. What? Bakugou answered, not checking who was calling. Riot didn't come back from patrol, Tetsu's voice told him from the other side. What do you mean he didn't come back from patrol? Bakugou exclaimed, mind racing at what those words meant, the implication behind them. The intern that went with him returned alone. Riot told him to tell us it was Code Orange, which means to call me. Bakugou finished for him. Something was wrong. What did the intern say happened? There was a car that pulled up to them. A man from the Hero Commission asked Kirishima to join them. Anything else? Bakugou asked. His mind tried to figure something out. They waited too long. Bakugou couldn't help but silently cursed himself over it. That's all we have, man, Tetsu told him with a sigh. We tried sending someone to track them as soon as we heard, but we couldn't find it. Fucking shit. Bakugou huffed under his breath, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Hey, Tin Can, can you babysit? Bakugou asked, already making his way to get Akio's stuff. Sure thing, man, Tetsu said. Good, I'm bringing Akio to the agency, Bakugou told him before hanging up, placing his phone in his back pocket before starting to pack Akio's things. He would burn the Hero Commission if he needed to. All right, friends, thank you so much for joining me for chapters 15 and 16. I hope that you will join me when we continue next time, reading chapters 17 and 18. See you next time. He walked over to Akugou. Akugou. He walked over to Akugou. Oh my God, I almost said it again.